One is lost and one is back home, our youngest brother, who by now, maybe he was 2 or 3 when Joseph left, and now he's maybe 15, 16, 17, right? He's too young to travel. Father wouldn't let him travel. But there's 12 of us. We're not spies, we're really our brothers. And that's when Joseph says, really, if you really are, then one of you stay here, and I'll send the rest of you on. Now, there are 3 times that Joseph wept. Let's look at the first time and look at the stronghold that was broken. In chapter 42, in verse 20, it says, so chapter 42 and verse 20, it says, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. So that's his trap. Simeon got to stay here. And here's the deal. He doesn't believe them. They could be just telling this story. We've got another brother at home, so you got to let us go home. He doesn't know Benjamin's still alive. Look what they did to me. And he was my brother from that one mother, and now he's all by himself. They could have done horrible things to him. He wanted to see him. So the only way that they were trying him to find out they were telling the truth, you stay here, bring that youngest brother to me. And it says, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, oh, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen? Therefore, behold, his blood is now acquired of us. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them, and he wept. And he wept because he thought that they didn't hear him. He was in the pit, crying, please let me out of here. What are you doing? And he cried and screamed and begged for his life. And he thought, they don't hear me. But here enough, they're saying, we heard the anguish of his soul. And they didn't hear me. They heard me. And that stronghold was broken in his life that said, God doesn't hear you. When you cry out in the night, when you're broken, when you're in pain, God doesn't hear you. That's the lie that was in his head. You've been thrown into a pit. You were thrown into a prison. You're way off in Egypt. No one knows you exist. God doesn't know your pain. Why would he let all this happen to you? And we do that to ourselves. Why would God let this happen to me? He does not know I'm in pain. But when he heard them say that, he realized they heard me. God must hear me. And so he cried. So he sends them off, puts money, all this stuff, that's what screws them up, because when they're traveling, they go, oh my God, how do we get our money back? We're in trouble. Well, we might as well go on home. And they go to Joseph, they go back to Jacob, and they have to tell him, Simeon's in prison. But if we take Benjamin, we can get Simeon out. And Jacob's like, oh, no, no, no. I lost one son. You're not going to take Benjamin. Forget it. Simeon just has to stay there. They wouldn't let him go. So the Bible says that there was more famine, so much so that all their grain was eaten up. And finally, they had to go. Finally he gave in. And sometimes God will really push you and allow more and more famine to force you to Egypt. You got to go there. It's okay to go there. You think, oh, no, I can't go there. That's going backwards. I left that. I can't go back to that job. Or I left that. I can't go back to this. No, it's okay. God is sending you to Egypt. There's something important there for you. So they go back with Benjamin. And this father is afraid of giving him up. And there are parents who had a hurt. Something happened a long time ago, and they're living in fear. Jacob was afraid to let that child go because of what happened. And how many of us, because of something that happened a long time ago, are still in fear? And we're acting out of fear because we don't trust God anymore. I can't trust God in that area. I can trust him everywhere else, but I had that car accident, so I refuse to drive again. I had that thing happen, so I refuse to do this. Does that make sense? That person left me, so I'll never love again. Because we don't trust God anymore. Can't trust him. So Jacob, I cannot trust God. I lost one son, I'm not going to do another. But finally he's forced to. So they send Benjamin down. The brothers come back. They walk in, they apologize to the manager. Not to Joseph, they don't see Joseph yet. He says, I don't know how we got that money. And in verse 43, in chapter 33, in chapter 43, in verse 23, because they're explaining, oh my goodness, we are just so, it says, peace be with you, do not be afraid, your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sack. God put that treasure in your sack. You're thinking it's something that's bad, but God did it. It's okay. So they sit in front of Joseph, and let's look at this next time he cried. In verse 29 it says, then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Now his heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep, and he went into his chamber and he wept there. This is his second cry. Because when he saw his brother, he knew God had protected him. And he said, God cares about the things that are important to me. God, the things that I treasure, the things that make me me, the one thing that's precious to me, God protected it. He really cares about those things. And he didn't know that. Not only does God know my pain, but he knows what I love. He knows who I am. He knows what's important. And he will give it to me. He restored it. And he wanted to run up and hug his brother, but they don't even know that this is Joseph yet. And they're on their way back. They kept it part of the deal, right? We brought Benjamin back, give us Simeon, fill up our sacks, and we can go. They gave him money, and they were on their way out. They said, okay, I'll fill up your sacks, let you go. Because they knew in their minds, we're supposed to be in Canaan. God had promised me Canaan, so that's where we're supposed to be. So they're on the way back to Canaan, saying, how can I keep Benjamin here, just so I can talk to him or see him a little bit longer? So he takes the golden chalice and puts it in the sack, in Benjamin's sack. He lets them go like a little ways. Then he sends his army after them, and they bring them back. And he says, one of you stole the chalice? And they're like, no. What? I don't understand. And he looks through all this, and sure enough, in Benjamin's sack is the chalice. And he says, he's going to have to stay here. Well, what can we do? You can't keep him here. And he says, well, if your father is still alive,